Hey! 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 Hey, you idiot! You promised to bring me back to life. Remember? A Viking never breaks a promise, right?
Are you Acererak?
Acererak, you fool. Assemble me now, and I will perhaps spare your life, mortal.
Shit. I guess we're painting a pissed off Lich. Hey good folks, my name is Leif and I want to welcome you to my channel called Devs and Dice. Today I'm going to put some paint on Acererak, the Lich miniature I got in the Undead paint set from Army Painter. So let's get cracking. Alright, so first off, I need to get this off its sprue. Now, this was fairly easily done here. I'm using Army Painter's clippers and some files and whatnot, and even the hobby knife, just to clean it up as much as I can. Now the model itself was quite nice and detailed. That being said, I don't have a huge experience in terms of assembling miniatures, so it was a little bit tricky. But I used some plastic glue from Army Painter just to get it all together, and it looked good to me. Now as you can see, there's plenty of details, and well, yeah, in order to make those details pop, I Zenithal primed the mini, first with black and then some dusting of white from above. The first color to enter the palette is Vampire Garments, a dark red color. Now, I'm gonna go with Wraith Black for the majority of Acererak's cloak, I guess it is? I'm not sure. The thing with this color is that even though it says black, it's actually more dark blue, as you can clearly see. But I had to actually test it out first just to make sure. Here I'm coming in with some Ethereal Spectre, and this I'm actually later in the video gonna redo, because this was a very nice sort of pastel-y purplish color, but for some reason that I can't really remember, but I didn't like that it was so desaturated. So I think at some point I'm actually gonna come back to that one. Now, for the actual garment, the main garment, I'm going to dry brush on some Draco Lich, a color that also was featured in the Undead set from Army Painter. Here I'm just trying to sort of pick out the raised details, just to get a quick, roadmap over where the highlight should go. Then afterwards I actually go in and sort of reinforce some of those highlights and sort of edge highlight all of those raised areas as much as I can, just to make sure that I don't miss any vital details. And sometimes I even actually use the regiment brush, sort of like a wet dry brush, I guess you would call it. But just sort of trying to hit the top, parts of it. Now I'm going to come in with one of my favorite washes, which is Dark Tone. This I start out on the garment just to see how it turns out, but soon you'll see that I'm actually going to use it on the entire model pretty much. That being said, I am very careful here just to make sure that, the pooling, I don't get those, what do you call it, tea stains, coffee stains, or whatever. So I'm trying to make sure that it actually stays in the recessed areas. Now, as you can see here, I don't know what I was thinking with that dark shade for that violet. It didn't look good. But I ignored that and powered on with some pure red for the highlights on the actual, I guess we could call this a scarf or something. One thing that I wanted to do with this mini was I wanted saturation, I wanted contrast, I wanted it to pop. And when it comes to red, I don't think you can go any more saturated than pure red when it comes to, highlighting red in general. So here, as you can see, I started out a little bit carefully with orc blood, and in the end I decided to, you know what, I like this color much better. It's a little bit more saturated color. It's also a little bit darker in its hue, so I went with that because I just felt like it complemented the color scheme a little bit better. And then I come back in with that Ethereal Spectre and I simply dry brush, this part of a garment just to get some quick highlights. And also I want to, you to be very aware that this, I did this as a speed paint. So I really gave myself, I think it was a couple of hours or so. And I have to say that these army painter, their system and their paints really work well for this. Cursed Blade was my color of choice, also from the Undead box, and I think I ended up covering a majority of the helmet and some of the details. I figured, that should, bring the most attention, and then, as you can see, I washed that with some dark tone as well. Now, Ghoul Grey and Bleached Bone, I sort of used those on a palette and mixed them quite a lot, to be honest. I really wanted to... I've wanted lately to sort of experiment more with mixing colors and so on, so that you don't have to follow an exact recipe. And I'm trying to get to that point. Here I'm going to use some Dirt Spatter and Monster Brown to paint in the basic highlights and midtones and such for the wooden staff. Regarding the wooden staff, it was a little bit difficult to understand exactly what was wood and then what's that thing, past his hand and so on, but I think it is some sort of, wraps or something like that. That's at least what I went with, so I've seen some painted up in a similar sort of fashion. So I pretty much just covered the entire staff from that point on with a sort of bone color that I mixed up, and then I just did a rough sort of highlight on the top parts. Now his hands and his face, I also went in and did some highlights on, where I thought that a highlight should be. I used some shining silver and I mixed that with the Cursed Blade just to create sort of a little bit brighter, color of that Cursed Blade, and it worked out pretty good, I have to say. And I am just picking out some details here just to create some variation in all of that sort of true metallic, that he has on his head and around his neck and such. Here I'm gonna come in with some strong tone, which is a dark brown wash, and I'm gonna wash the entire staff with this. I wanted this one to go much more in brown tones. For one, because we had a skull at the end of it, and this is a recipe that is tried and tested, so to speak, so I know this will work fine. And then also for those, wraps, it will do a nice job to create some nice contrast there. Now once that had dried, I'm going to come back in with that color and just dry brush in some highlights back up. And as you can see, it works quite well, I think. Sometimes I really love speed painting and, not staying on a spot too long, but just sort of move on, because you do get a lot of models painted. Here I figured, you know what, I want to do a little bit of extra, so I'm going to come back in and highlight the skull a little bit, just catching again those raised edges, just to make that skull pop a little bit more. Now in terms of these wraps, there were some that were more sort of prominent on the staff. I decided to use Dirt Spatter and Monster Brown to sort of base coat and highlight this a little bit. Now at this point I added some matte black. I really didn't feel like the base gave me that much space to play around with. If you look, you can actually see that his cloak, garment, whatever, it sort of covers most of it. So I actually went with, you know, just a black base just to sort of not, you know, get, you know, no attention to it essentially. Now, Ghostly Vapors was an interesting sort of pastel green, you know, color, and it really felt, you know, spectral or ghostly in some ways. I saw that in the middle of his helmet he had this sort of, I think, a jewel, so I just base coated that, and then I came in with that moldy wash, which is, I would say, a sort of moss green wash, and I washed the entire jewel or whatever it is. I'm guessing that this is where he sort of, it's some sort of focus crystal where he gets some powers. And I try to make it look a little bit more like a crystal. Light will, you know, be at the bottom of it rather than the top. And here I'm coming in with a bunch of colors and some of that airbrush medium. What I'm trying to do here, and this was actually quite tricky, is I'm trying to create some glow effects on Acererak's eyes and also on that jewel that he has on his helmet. And also, actually, a little bit on the chest piece he has. Now at this point, let's have a look at the final result. Alright folks, that was it. I'm happy to have painted up this miniature before the end of the year. I thought the result looked quite good. This was a speed paint and I was aiming for tabletop quality. So what did you think about the paint job? Feel free to, as always, comment in the comment section down below. If you like these videos, then please consider subscribing, liking, or sharing this with any friends that might find these videos interesting. Alright good folks, I want to wish you a happy holidays. And let's all hope for a better 2021. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.